Hi, and welcome to our video presentation on important information for H1B employees. My name is Emily Neumann, immigration attorney with Reddy and Neumann PC, located in Houston, Texas. Before we begin, I need to let you know that the information I'm about to provide is not to be construed as legal advice for your specific situation. For advice on your situation, please contact an attorney. This information should not be construed as legal advice and does not constitute an engagement with Reddy and Neumann PC or establish an attorney-client relationship. To begin, I want to point out who this USCIS memo that came out in January is likely to affect. The biggest question that we're getting these days from H1B workers is, what can I do to make sure the memo is not going to cause a problem for me? Now, a lot of the things that need to be done are coming from the employer's side, but there are some small things that you can do to try to take control of the situation to help ensure that your status is not going to be affected by this memo. The memo is going to affect any H1B workers who are working at a client location, meaning any location, third-party site that is not managed and it does not belong to the H1B petitioning company. This is very likely to come up in the IT consulting industry, also in the healthcare staffing industry. But it will come up anytime the worker is placed off-site. And the questions that are raised by the memo regarding the employer-employee relationship are going to be raised at the time you file your H1B extension, H1B transfer, when you go for your visa stamping interview at the consulate. This could come up at the port of entry and also during a site visit that are being carried out by FDNS right now. So what can you do to prepare yourself so that when you're filing your extension or transfer or traveling that you won't have any problems because of this memo? First thing is, make sure your employer or the sponsoring company of your H1B is aware of the memo and that they're taking proactive steps to comply. Make sure that you are increasing your communication that you have with your H1B sponsoring company. Talk to them on a weekly basis about what's going on with your project, or submit weekly reports to them so that there can be more back and forth interaction, so that the employer will more easily be able to show how they're supervising you when you're off-site. Make sure that you're submitting your timesheets to your H1B sponsoring company, not just to your vendor or to your end client. In addition, make sure any leave requests that you have are submitted to your H1B sponsoring company in writing so that they can be kept in your personnel file. One of the things that we've seen in the past may not be as common now, but it still comes up from time to time in the IT consulting industry, is that the H1B worker's salary is determined based on the rate that the sponsoring company gets in their client contract. This is called a percentage basis a lot of times, and this is something that should be avoided for H1B workers. Your salary should be consistent, needs to be based on what was mentioned in the H1B petition. You should be paid on the same salary basis regardless of what project you're on. In addition, we've seen a lot of times where H1B workers will take part of their salary as a per diem rather than as salary to avoid the tax liability of that extra money. This also should be avoided for H1B workers. Make sure also that you're considering your H1B sponsoring company to be your actual employer and not the client company. We see a lot of times where our clients are H1B employees who use LinkedIn or Facebook or other social networking sites where you mention where you're working, and a lot of times they'll mention that where they're working at the client site, and it makes it sound like they're saying, yes, I'm an employee of the client, which is not the case, and that's not what you want to be saying when you're filing your H1B extension. So make sure that you list your H1B petitioning company as your employer, and maybe you're working at on a project at this client, but you're not working for that client. They're not your actual employer. We do know USCIS looks up things on the internet. They do data mining as well, so you want to be very careful about what you're putting out there on the internet. Also, right now, traveling is a bit risky for H1B workers, especially those that are going to be affected by this memo. We've learned that CBP, which are the officers at the port of entry, they're actually assisting in various investigations being carried out by ICE, USCIS, and FDNS. So they'll be asking more questions likely of H1B workers, including who do you work for, how is your pay computed, who pays your salary, what are your job duties, what have you been paid so far since you joined this company. So you need to be prepared to answer those questions at the port of entry. In addition, we've learned that there's a new program starting out at the Newark airport, but it's likely to expand to other locations where they're doing random checks of H1B and L visa holders when they're entering the country. They will ask much more detailed questions of those particular workers that they've singled out, and if there are any questions regarding the admissibility based on the issues raised in the memo, they will likely be moved into secondary inspection for a much more detailed interview and possibly a rejection of their entry back into the country. Besides the memo, there are also site visits that are going on right now by FDNS. That's the Fraud Detection and National Security Office of USCIS. We're expecting there to be 25,000 site visits this year. They're randomly selecting applications that have recently been approved and basically going to the H1B company to make sure that all the information provided in the petition is accurate. And during these site visits, they do often ask to speak with the H1B employee, so you should be prepared to know how to answer the questions if your company has a site visit. So the visits usually last about 15 minutes, maybe up to a half an hour. They're mainly going to be talking to the H1B employer, but they do often ask to speak with the employee. They want to review your pay records, they may tour your office or your facility, interview you again regarding your pay, regarding your job duties, job title, and they may also want to interview coworkers or your manager. And it's important to point out that these site visits are not just happening at your company's location, but also at the client site, especially where the client site is listed on your H1B petition. So you need to be ready to answer those questions. So how do you prepare yourself? Make sure that you know what's in your petition. Know the job title, salary, the job description, know the terms of employment. Make sure you know what was mentioned about your education background and also your prior work history, so that when you're answering your questions, everything is consistent with what was already filed in your petition. We've mentioned to many of our clients, the H1B sponsoring employers, to designate a certain person in the company who will be the contact person for any site visit that happens. And so you should ask your company who they've designated as their contact person so that you can provide that information to the site visit officer if any other questions arise that you're not able to answer. That's all the information I have for you right now. Hopefully this information's been helpful to allow you to prepare yourself to avoid any problems with your immigration status. My name is Emily Neumann, immigration attorney with Reddy and Neumann PC, located in Houston, Texas. We also have offices in Dallas, Texas. You can visit our website at rnlawgroup.com, or you can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and on Twitter.